Edward Jones and Tex Morris brings us our conversation with Cole Cubelic, who, in our opinion, is the best college football analyst in the game. He breaks down the sport, watches it better than anybody. He's with us every Friday in what is gearing towards the college football season. September 26th is the opening date as LSU, the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12 march forward. What a week it has been in college football. Always good to get a peace of mind from Cole. Good morning. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing all right.
What up, Cole?
Wrap up this week of the college football world for me in the first question. Could you do that?
Bananas.
Yeah.
Bonkers. Unexpected. It's just. I think a lot of us maybe you guys are like me, and I'm just partially in denial with a lot of this. Mm-hmm. I never really thought the Pac-12 was going to go. I just didn't. Never really thought that it was going to happen based on geography, what was happening in certain spots where schools are located inside that conference. And then when the Players United thing came about, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I thought immediately, man, that's not going to be good for us seeing Pac-12 football this year. Probably shouldn't think that way. That's probably not right to feel that way, but that's just kind of the way that I felt the administration would look at it. So it was, we are in the middle of top 5 most historic moments in the history of college football.
Yeah.
College football has been paused, 2-3 times for an entire season ever? So, we're talking about world wars.
Yeah.
That got in the way of it before. This is unprecedented stuff, man, and it's scary. It's hurtful. You hate it for the players. It's confusing. I think it makes you question a lot of things, and it makes you just wonder why. When and why, I think, are the two big questions that a lot of us have right now. When are things going to get back to normal? When are we going to see things that we want to see? And why are some of the things happening that have already taken place?
Do they ever get back to normal?
No, I don't think so. I think what's your definition of normal, I guess?
I guess what we saw last year, 2019 edition of college football. You ever see it like that again?
No, I think it's going to be like, sorry, Cole.
College football as we know it is finished. Mm-hmm. And the last time that I remember thinking this way, and it was still very different, was, I went to the Auburn-Florida State game in Pasadena. It was the last BCS championship game, hell of a football game. And I walked away from that game, and I looked at my wife and 2 of my teammates that were with me, and I said, college football is never going to be the same. It's changed forever. We witnessed the end of an era, and that was the beginning of the playoff era. And I said, you know what? It might be great, but it's not going to be the same ever. And yeah, that was the last major sort of fork in the road for college football that I remember, and this one's much bigger than that because there are multiple directions that we could go.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like, to me, when you talk about college football being the same or not, like I'm not even thinking of it from a pandemic sense because we'll get through this, but I do agree with you. This feels like something that ends with kind of the professionalization a little bit of college football and maybe even something like all Power 5 schedules. Speaking of schedules, Cole, we're talking to Cole Cubelic here on Off the Bench. How about LSU, right? We were kind of throwing shade at Alabama, making jokes about how they're probably stomping their feet, and that's why it's taking so long. LSU getting hooked up on the schedule front.
I could not believe that the return trip to Vanderbilt actually
I know, dude.
I guess the city of Nashville was so excited about what LSU fans did last year that they just decided, okay, we're gonna try to get as many people as we can. We don't know what it's gonna look like inside the stadium, but hopefully they can come they can come drink out the town again like they did a year ago. But it's not what I anticipated. I think it's easy to look at it and say, oh, okay, well, they got hooked up, and a couple of other teams got hooked up as well.
Yeah.
But it could have been much worse. I'll say that. And unless you're Arkansas or Missouri, and then I don't think it could have been much worse if you're those schools.
Missouri.
They gave Drinkwitz He looks like such a nerd already. They gave Drinkwitz in year one. Alabama and LSU added to the schedule out of nowhere. Oh my God, dude.
Welcome to the league, guys.
Yeah.
Cole, what about Auburn? What's because to me Auburn's additions are very interesting. Obviously South Carolina, I do believe that Auburn's clearly better than them, but Auburn Tennessee feels like a bit of a separation game where Auburn can prove that indeed they are cut above, or Tennessee can prove that that they're moving towards that top. That there's some legitimate steam there.
Yeah, it makes for two interesting opponents because I already thought the Auburn-Kentucky game was going to be one that was really interesting. And I think Kentucky's going to be better than people believe. And that was earlier in the season, and I kind of viewed that as sort of a swing game, sort of that fork-in-the-road game. Auburn-Mississippi State had been that for a long time, where either one of those teams were going to separate. Usually it was the winner of that game. It was a close game a lot of times, very competitive. And then the winner seemed like they would kind of go on. I mean, like if you remember that 2013 Auburn team, everybody remembers Ricardo Lewis, the Prairie Jordan Hare, and the kick six. But, I mean, Nick Marshall had to throw a wheel route to C.J. Uzoma with around a minute left in that game to take the lead at home for that Auburn team, to kind of go undefeated. You remember Cam in Starkville, I think that was like 17-10. And the Auburn offense just couldn't get anything going that day. And then, obviously, Auburn finds a way to squeak out a win, and then, they kind of get things ramped up a little bit. So I viewed that Kentucky game that way, and I think Tennessee's a very similar opponent. They obviously have a great offensive line. If they can get a quarterback, just not throw it to the team in the different color jersey, they got weapons in the backfield. They've got weapons at receiver. I think Jeremy's as good of a coach as far as X's and O's and in-game adjustments as anybody in the league. So I think you put a couple of – now you got more dangerous teams on your schedule. So I think that Tennessee game is one that I don't view Auburn and Tennessee very different from one another going into this season.
Well, who got it worse, Arkansas adding Georgia, Florida, or Missouri adding LSU, Bama?
No, it's Missouri. I don't even think it's close. I mean, it's Georgia, Florida. Yeah, those are tough. But I mean, you're talking about the defending national champion, and you're talking about the team in the league every year that people say could end up being national.
But
champions.
I guess is Arkansas even worse than Missouri, so that then becomes more impactful for them, or it's just all about LSU, Alabama?
That makes sense. No, that makes sense. And maybe you would say the fact that Arkansas already has Auburn, Alabama, A&M, LSU, and then they get those two.
Oh God.
Yeah, probably a little bit worse. I mean,
think about
listen, we still think that the West is better than the East, top to bottom, even though the East is a little bit deeper this year than it has been. Vanderbilt's just not going to be a good football team. But, I mean, and then you add to that, what's Mississippi State really going to look like? Does that offense get going? I mean, they got a veteran quarterback that could be pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
And then we know Lane Kiffin can dial up plays, and he's going to have a ton of young talent on that offense. So, yeah, overall difficulty, I might agree with you that Arkansas probably got it worse.
What about Will Muschamp in South Carolina? Is he on any sort of hot seat? Because to me, it seems like Will Muschamp has done nothing but turning kind of mediocre results pretty much his entire head coaching career while getting like $4 to $5 million a year.
I mean, me personally, T-Bob, I don't think anybody's on a hot seat this year. I just
That's
don't.
fair.
Yeah.
I think that there's just financially, fiscally, I don't think you're going to be able to make it happen.
Yeah.
And unless you just have some guy with FU money coming in saying how much he hates that coach, and he has a certain coach that he wants to get in there, and he's willing to write, an 8-figure check to be able to make it happen, then okay, maybe possibly. But I don't know how many people are just willing to do that in these times. So, I mean, I think almost everybody, unless it's something off the field, some sort of a behavioral issue or, something along those lines, I just don't see many coaches getting fired this year, no matter what they do on the field. I mean, I think, and especially if you're talking about, if we're going to talk about record and performance, well, if you're playing 10 league games, like we talked about this on my show on Jackson Birmingham, like what's acceptable to fans, to administration, to analysts, to us, talking about on the radio, because a 2-loss season might be really damn good.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not. But I mean, how many 2-loss seasons have we been bragging about recently? Not very many. So, like, if you look at that South Carolina schedule, if they were to go 5-5, that would actually be a pretty good year. I mean, it sort of depends on who the wins are and who the losses are and what your performances look like. But 500 against that schedule wouldn't be bad for them. But is anybody going to give them credit for it? Probably not. So it's going to be weird, weird times. But I don't think anybody's truly on the hot seat. You'd have to have a couple of mega boosters just really rolling in, saying that they just can't deal with it anymore, and they're willing to write all the checks to be able to get it done.
Add a little input for us here. As we were discussing earlier, we were making a tier list of LSU's unanimous All-Americans since 2000, and we were talking about the safety position, and they've got Grant Delpit, LaRon Landry, and Eric Reed. Jamal Adams was not on that list. He was not a unanimous All-American.
Craig Stelz is technically on that list.
But if you're choosing out of the three, Delpit, Landry, and Reed, where are you going?
Man, I would probably go Eric Reed. I feel like he had more range. I feel like I remember him making more big plays, and maybe I'm just stuck on that one-handed interception in Tuscaloosa. Grant was a little bit beat up and obviously couldn't play the way that he was capable of playing some of the time, and I think that held him back a little bit. But I mean, LaRon Landry was he was like a damn inside linebacker playing safety. It's just, I think if you're talking about a guy coming up to the box, you're probably going to take him. But I think if you want a safety, a guy who's going to be versatile, can do different things, cover different positions, and play a little bit physical, I think you probably have to go Eric Reed.
Have a good weekend, my friend.
I appreciate it, guys. You too. Thank you.
All right, take it easy, Cole. There you go. So he agreed with what we were saying.
Yeah.
E. Reed actually holding it down at the top of a very good safety list.
Edward Jones, Tex Morris, bringing that conversation weekly here on Off the Bench. We will close at hour 2 next.